Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be in Ukraine for the first time. I'm a Brazilian developer who lives in Ireland and works for an American company, and I'm speaking in Ukraine. So that's a great experience for me, sharing experience and knowledge with different people from different countries. And I will talk about Blazor. I know some of you probably tested Blazor so far, but I will explain from scratch why Microsoft is building a new single-page application, and I show a demo some features of that. And in the next talk, in this room, you have more about Blazor and enjoy. I hope I can help you to understand more about this one. A few things about me. I have been working with software development for 13 years. I worked with all the versions of .NET so far, starting with .NET Framework version 1, web forms, and now .NET Core 3.0. And I worked in many projects in Brazil, United States, and Ireland as a tech lead and software developer. Feel free to connect with me in my social profiles. Basically, it's not a personal profile, it's a professional one, because I took part already in more than 100 events in over the last 3 years. So I have a lot of people there. I like to talk with people about technology. So I will talk quickly about the current status of web technology, some concept about single-page application, and we'll explain quickly. We have just 15 minutes to explain Blazor, and I will make a comparison between the new single-page application by Microsoft and other single-page applications that it's already being used for a long time, so Angular, React, and Vue.js. I know we have much more JavaScript libraries and frameworks that is doing the same, but I will focus in these three ones, and I will make a demo with all this stuff. So before we start to explain about Blazor, it's important to understand what's the current status of web technologies. If you go back 15 years ago, everything was processed in the server using PHP, the old ASP, and other languages in other platforms. And this is complicated by performance costs and other. We have many other issues on that approach. And the big companies in the world, Google, Microsoft, Apple, realized that it's not scalable at all, and it started to use more JavaScript in the client side, as you know, and everything you can run in the browser, it's better to run in the browser. But we started to have some performance issues because the needs for performance changed a lot over the last 5 years, mainly because of the connection is better, because the complexity of the applications is much bigger than we have before. Some companies migrated a big desktop applications to web applications and start to have performance problems. And because of these issues and because of the limitations of JavaScript, the big companies start to build a new technology called WebAssembly. that's actually, it's doing the same for web that we have for desktop application. We develop an application in C#, C++, and other language, and the framework transpile to WebAssembly for us. We don't need to know how to communicate with the machine properly, because the language is doing that for us, and it's much more faster and powerful than JavaScript, because you can run server-side code in the browser. The browser becomes your server now, and that's pretty cool. So in the server side, of course, we have database operation, logic implementation, business layer. We can process HTML there and make security validation. But since the browsers has more and more features inside, like local storage, session storage, and better way to store, to handle the DOM itself, you can transfer from the server to the client a lot of stuff. So we don't need to run in the server more, I don't know, anymore 100% of our application. And it's really a good approach for scalability. So of course we have some limitations. You still need a server to run your application, but we can delegate to the client side a lot of stuff right now. Since the majority of companies move to the server side for the client side, using JavaScript frameworks and libraries, basically all this stuff can now be run in the client side now. Of course, again, I'm saying it's not 100%, but it's everything you could run in the client side. If you can transfer the responsibility to client side, it's better for you because of scalability. And the nicest thing I think about Blazor and WebAssembly, you can run not only JavaScript and HTML and rendering your stuff in the browser. You can run C# directly on the browser. So that's a mindset change, and that's powerful, and I will demonstrate that for you. So some problems to run in the server, and that's because why the companies migrate to client side. Performance, latency, it's no friendly user experience at all, because if you have a pushback, you have to reload your page all the time. That happens with the traditional ASP.NET web applications, MVC, web forms. So it's a bad experience if your user has, for each page, each interaction, rendering and pushing all the page again. So because of that, Angular, Vue.js, and React becomes more and more popular because it's a better experience. So this is the three most famous ones. JavaScript libraries. When these frameworks were made, the mindset for web development changed completely, and mainly using Angular. But apart from many companies are using that now, I believe that frameworks will change completely in the next years, because the Google, Microsoft, Apple, and other big companies are pushing for WebAssembly, and these frameworks currently is based on JavaScript. So, or these frameworks change completely or reinvent themselves, or that will be replaced in 5 years to other technologies. So these JavaScript frameworks are available for a long time. It's pretty mature, and the first one is jQuery. It's not, of course, framework. It's a simple library, but it's for a long time. And we have Angular since 2009. It's a long time. It's a long time for JavaScript library, and there is a lot of legacy using Angular, React, and Vue.js in the market. So, and when these companies, the big companies, start to use Angular, Microsoft with TypeScript, supporting these JavaScript frameworks, this becomes more and more popular, and that was a solution for moving from server side to client side, but probably that's going to be problematic if WebAssembly will become more and more popular. So with these JavaScript frameworks, as you know, you run a lot of stuff in the client side, and if you need to call some resource on the server, you need to use APIs using JSON. That's the most common approach. Now we have better protocols with HTTP2. We can use gRPC and more modern stuff, but 99% of our applications, mainly .NET applications, is using .NET Core as Web API and using a JavaScript library, Angular, React, and Vue.js, or other libraries. And the communication between the client side and the server side is using API. So, and an advantage of that is if your architecture is good, if you made a good plan for that, your application can run offline using these JavaScript frameworks. So using this approach, you can transfer your logic. Então, so you have like in ASP.NET Web MVC application, the model, the view, and the controller. The view is in the client side in that approach, and now the model and the controller can be in the client side as well, and just the sensitive operation, or that depends on the database run on the server. You can delegate a lot of stuff to client side right now, apart from Blazor, and take advantage of that. So these JavaScript frameworks, all of them are based in components, as you know. That's not a new thing. As some of you maybe think, that approach exists since 30 years ago in really old languages, and when these JavaScript frameworks are becoming more and more mature, they realized that the component stuff, it's a cool thing to use, because the partial view, it's not a component. This stuff in the old versions of .NET framework, it's not a component at all. You can try to simulate that, but it's not a real component, and these JavaScript libraries are based on, and Blazor it's following the same approach. You can build a real components using Blazor, different from web forms with partial view and this stuff. So Angular, React, and Vue.js and other frameworks are based only in JavaScript. Angular is using TypeScript and it's transferring that to JavaScript. But all the frameworks, the Blazor ones and the other ones that will be created in the future, it's based only in WebAssembly, and that means you can run server-side code directly on the browser. C++, C# right now because of .NET Core, and other languages as well. And the key here, the main point is, if you have already a legacy in your company, in your project, if you have a desktop application, sharing libraries everywhere, you can use the same library to build web applications now. And you don't need to have an API in the middle between your server-side code and your client. You can use the same, exactly the same library in Blazor. Of course, if your library is compatible with .NET Standard and .NET Core. So what can I do with WebAssembly? Increase the performance. It's much more faster than JavaScript. We can reduce the latency issues, because if we can run the server-side code in the browser, we don't need to call so many APIs anymore to get some routines in the server. That's better for performance as well. And we can share libraries. So that's a little weird for who never developed something or started a project with Blazor, that we can run C# direct on the browser. It's some people ask me, oh, is that similar Silverlight? Because Silverlight, it was running C# on the browser. No, it's not like Silverlight. You don't need a plugin. You don't need to, I don't know, to have a badge experience to the users. And with Blazor, actually, the dream of Microsoft becomes true, because it was always a desire for them to run C# directly on the browser, and Silverlight was a trick for that. But as you know, Silverlight already died, as should be, and now we have Blazor, but differently of Silverlight. Blazor, I think it's not a temporary technology. It's not a transition technology, because apart from the DAO bits over Blazor itself, I'm sure, I have 100% sure that WebAssembly, it's a new thing, but it should be the standard in the web, because it's multi-platform, and you can run WebAssembly everywhere. Of course, the old browsers can't handle that, but definitely it's something that we have to take a look right now, because probably we use every single day in the next years. So that's how WebAssembly looks like. In your left side is C++ code, a pretty simple one. And in the right side, we have WebAssembly. So it's easy to write WebAssembly code. No, it's not. It's not friendly. You can't build an application directly using WebAssembly. Of course, you can, but it's pretty hard. So, and that's what the browser really understands. That's a real code for the browser. So, and what Blazor is doing right now, it's taking, you developing your application in C#, and the .NET Core will transpile that to WebAssembly for you. You don't need to know WebAssembly. So, and as I said, WebAssembly will become more and more popular. Probably you use every day in your routine as a web developer in the next years. But using Blazor, you don't need to know WebAssembly. So that's pretty cool. That's weird for some developers, but we don't need to take care of WebAssembly. We need to take care just of course, we already know that's C#. So difference between WebAssembly and JavaScript performance, if you have a simple web application, like doing CRUDs, basically operations, you have not so much difference between JavaScript and WebAssembly, but if you have a real complex operation like 3D rendering, video streaming, encryption, you can take a real advantage of WebAssembly. So I think if you have, I don't know, a simple enterprise application, doesn't matter, WebAssembly, but if you have application, a complex one that needs a high performance, definitely WebAssembly is better for you. So what's Blazor itself? So it's a single-page application from Microsoft. Now we have a competitor of Angular, React, and Vue.js, apart from it's not based on JavaScript, but it's a single-page application. That was missing in .NET platform, in my opinion. So the Microsoft make the TypeScript, and it was already frustrating for .NET developers that we need to know a lot of stuff, because Angular, complex application in Angular, it's not easy to build. The architecture, the components, how I make a good plan of that to debug as well. So you need to know now Angular, React, Vue.js, a lot of stuff, and plus Entity Framework, C#, .NET Core, Docker. It's a lot of stuff. So, and with Blazor, you can take the advantage to know already C#, Razor, Entity Framework, all the resources we have already in .NET Core, and build your single-page application. You don't need to know a lot of stuff. I know we have to be full stack, but definitely I think that happens with everyone. Despite we are full stack, we are better in one side of that, or front end or back end. We have different levels of knowledge. It's based in WebAssembly and not in JavaScript, and that started actually not from Microsoft initiative, but it was only at beginning in 2016, 3 years ago. Initiative by one guy as an open source project, and just people had the brilliant idea. what about if I transpile, I use Blazor and C# and .NET to transpile to WebAssembly? It was a great idea and worked terribly at the beginning. I tested that 2 or 3 years ago, but now it's getting more and more better. And after the Microsoft figure out that it was a great idea because WebAssembly is being pushed by Microsoft, Google, and the other players, instead to build something to transpile C# code to WebAssembly, Microsoft take these open source projects and into .NET platform, and now it's official part of .NET platform. So we have basically 2 types of Blazor applications, the client side and the server side. The first one generated the underlying files and code to run only on the client side. That means WebAssembly, DLLs, JavaScript code, HTML, and we have the server-side Blazor approach that it's already in production. It's already released by Microsoft. It's not experimental or preview anymore. And you run everything on the server side, and the communication between the client side and the server side happens using SignalR. There is a limitation in that approach, of course, but because of the limitation of connections you can have in the same time using SignalR, but it's stable, completely stable and ready to use in production. Blazor uses dependency injection, as you already do in a lot of stuff in C#, and you can use all the libraries and resources you already have in .NET Core, Entity Framework, all the libraries. So how can we create a Blazor app? You need to install the last version of Visual Studio 2019, install .NET Core 3.0 or 3.1, and you have 2 different types: Blazor app that runs in client side, and the server app and the WebAssembly app. I'll be focused on WebAssembly app because the server side, it's nice, it's using WebAssembly, but I think the biggest innovation is more in Blazor WebAssembly app. So I used that once for the demo, and let's show some code. I will run this application here, just to take a look. And I created this demo to demonstrate a few things for this event. So I will demonstrate how to use JavaScript to combine JavaScript and C# in the same applications, because it's a little weird to use, to say that you don't need to use JavaScript anymore, but what about to integrate with Google Maps? What about to use, I don't know, some JavaScript library? You can still use in JavaScript, don't worry, but definitely it's a hack to combine C# and JavaScript. So what the structure of Microsoft Blazor application, as you can see here, you don't have MVC folders here. I created manually this model. You don't have anything. You have just pages and shared components, or the same approach we have in ASP.NET, traditional ASP.NET web applications. And how it looks like, if we take a look in the index here, we have this directive here. We have, you know that for Angular, React, and Vue.js, it's really, depends on your application, it's really complicated to manage the roles. You need to put a lot of stuff manually in a specific file and set that, many config files. In Blazor, you can specify the roles right here. So just put a name, index, Ukraine, I don't know, whatever you want. It's much more simple than React, Angular, and Vue.js. And I will show you where we have in the discharge default my components itself and how each exactly works. I will create a new item here, Razor component, and I will call, I don't know, Net Fest. And it's empty. You can have CSS, C#, and HTML code here. And how it exactly works. If we take a look, I will stop the application here. If we take a look in other components like this one, we have the HTML here with buttons and whatever you want, and you can specify in this block of code here the C# code. So it's similar you do with Angular. You have the HTML, CSS, of course in separated files to make this nicer, but you can combine in the same file all the routines you want for the component. And I already created here a few fields, but let's do that in that one. I will create some properties here, string description. And instead to use static content here, I will call my property here. And as you can see, I'm using Razor syntax. You already do that in ASP.NET MVC application. It's the same. So considering you know already C# and you know Razor, let's use Blazor because it's much more faster than everything Microsoft has made already. So, and I created this component called NetFest here. I specified only these contents. I can specify, I don't know, a paragraph here, description, and to use that, I will use in the index one. We'll put more space here. To use that, the IntelliSense, it's already showing the component, and the properties, it's already available. I will specify the annotation here, parameters, parameter, and this is parameter as well. So these properties are already available for us. So I will create a new one, .NET Fest test, a bigger one. I will close. Let's run. Using Angular, React, and Vue.js, the IntelliSense code, it's not so good as we have in server-side code. So it's pretty simple, as you can see. It's working, it's simple. It was made to be simple. It's not like we do with partial views that we need to create a partial view and pass always a model. It wasn't a real component. That's a real component. So let's show something more complex right now. I created a page here to demonstrate the performance and how Blazor is handling the DOM, is manipulating the DOM for us. I created input text field here. The name is quantity, and here I created just a simple variable. And I associated this input text field to my variable, and I'm making a loop here to show a specific form based on in what I type here. And let's see how it works. And I specified here the route dynamic fields. So I already put in the menu here. And I will specify one. I'm running C#, only C# in my component, and the .NET, the Blazor, it's manipulating my DOM using C# because it's using WebAssembly, and we have a JavaScript file generated by the .NET framework that's possible for us. So we have C#, WebAssembly, and JavaScript running and make it possible. So, and let's specify something weird here. So as you can see, it's I run C# server-side code, and it's executed automatically 500 forms for us instantaneously. It's much more faster than JavaScript. If you take a look here, I will refresh the application. And as you can see here, traditionally we have in web applications JavaScript, CSS, images, etc. Now we have DLLs here. The browser downloaded the application, the C# application, and that's running, is being running directly on the browser. So that's pretty cool. And as you can see here, we have this file Blazor WebAssembly.js, and we have a mono.wasm, that's a WebAssembly file. What happened here? So we have this C# DLLs, that's it's the main DLL for our application, .NET demo client side, and the WebAssembly, it's communicating. I'm explaining, it's much more complex than that, but to be simple, the WebAssembly is communicating to my DLLs, it's running that, and my JavaScript file here, it's communicating with WebAssembly and in both directions. So I can run all my C# stuff directly on the browser now. So it's a little weird for some, maybe for some of them, but that's working. What they did, I don't know. It's working fine. It's perfect. So let's show something here. I have this page here. If you want to use traditional web API calls, how can we do that? I have created already this Blazor page here. I have basically a table here, a list of country. I created manually my model in a folder, and I have a loop here to to populate my table, and I have this. I'm calling the HTTP client. I'm creating an instance of that using dependency injection. It's similar we have using. And here I'm calling an API, and that's getting the data for me. It's simple. If you want to use a traditional web API calls, you can do that without problem. Of course, if you want more performance and if you have an internal web API created by inside the application, it's better to call directly in the component the C# function instead to call an API. So and maybe a lot of developers will get sad when someone tells that you don't need to use JavaScript anymore. What can I do with my JavaScript libraries, my components I have created for other purposes like integrate with Google Maps and other APIs? I can call JavaScript using C#, and I can call C# using JavaScript. So I created here two buttons. One of them we'll call JavaScript methods, and the other one we'll call C# methods. And if we take a look in my index page, so I have two functions here, JS methods and C# methods. The JS method is changing the contents of one specific value using a specific parameter, and this one it's calling in the JavaScript side C# method. So I will open my component here. I have these C# functions here, async methods, and for instance, call JavaScript methods, and I'm referring here my JavaScript function that it's already here. So in C#, I'm calling JavaScript function and passing as a parameter a C# variable. So that's a really that's kind of strange, but that's possible in Blazor. As you can see here, the content of my C# variable is JavaScript function called from C#. And if you go here, JavaScript function called from C#. That means I called a JavaScript function in C# side, and I passed a parameter to this JavaScript function using only C#. If you want to still using JavaScript in your application, you can still doing that, but it's much more simple than you usually do. You don't need to call an API to pass as a parameter or array, and in the client side to manipulating the returning of Ajax methods and do that stuff. You can call directly the JavaScript function here, and the JavaScript function will work perfectly. So you can still using your JavaScript functions. So, and I have here this function here, CS call back methods, C# function called from JavaScript. If you can wanted to do that before in web forms or ASP.NET MVC application, you needed to use, I don't know, a lot of view bags and view data and passing the JavaScript function as a parameter, or in your view referring this one. You don't need to do that anymore. And I have this one called C# methods. So I'm just referring this one. That's the name of my JavaScript function called C# methods. As you can see here, I have C# methods here. I'm calling in C# my JavaScript one, and here I put a message in the server side code, C# function called from C#. I will refresh here, and C# function called from JavaScript. You can easily make the interop between JavaScript and C# if you want to still using JavaScript. It's easier to do that with Blazor. You don't need to use Ajax and this stuff and call web API. Of course, if you need to get data from database, you still need this stuff, but definitely it's much easier. So what's the benefits of Blazor, at least in my opinion so far? I'm testing and using Blazor for 3 years already, more or less. I could see a lot of improvements on that so far, and quick improvements. One of the benefits of that, in my opinion, it's the easy adoption for .NET developers, because you already know C#, you already know .NET Core, you already know Razor. So you can still using your knowledge with Blazor. So that means if you never build a Blazor application, you can install in your home this weekend and build your application in 1 weekend, or migrate easily your existing applications to Blazor. So it's a good option. It's uncomplicated to learn. It's really easy. It was made to be simple. And in the performance, as you could see in the dynamic fields, it's much faster than JavaScript. You can take the advantage of that. So it's compatible with all modern browsers. 11, IE 11, it's not a modern browser. I'm talking about modern browsers. So, and it's working fine in Linux, Windows, macOS, Android, mobile browsers. It's working fine in the modern ones. Can be hosted in a very low-cost service. Considering your application run in the client side, you don't need a good server because it's running on the browser. You can host in a simple server, even using Linux. no problem. You can reuse all your code that you already have in .NET Core in C# for other applications, console applications, Windows servers, I don't know, everything you have in .NET Standard and that is compatible with .NET Core, you can use reuse in your Blazor application, and it's working perfectly offline. Considering the user already downloaded the application and C# is running on the browser, if you don't have any extra resources that you need to call, external service or database, and if your user lost completely the connection, the application will still working perfectly. I have to talk about negative points. So unfortunately, it's not massively used yet. So sometimes I think only myself is using that, but I'm sure more companies and developers are using so far, but it's definitely pretty new in the market. We have a problem of scalability for server-side Blazor application because it's using SignalR, and we have a limitation of connections for SignalR on the server. We don't know about the future of Microsoft Blazor, but one thing I'm sure, we don't know what will happen with Microsoft Blazor, but we are sure that we can trust that WebAssembly will survive in the market. And there is limited capability for debugging. It's not so easy to debug problem and issues. So I'm open for questions right now. That's my contact. Again, if you want to keep in touch. Thanks so much. Let's answer questions.
Thank you for your presentation. And in the beginning, you said that WebAssembly can be used for writing games on browsers. And my question is there any possibility in Blazor to work with OpenGL API?
Yes, and maybe, because WebAssembly is completely compatible with C++, for instance, and the majority of games that needs a high performance are using C++, and if that's the case, we work fine. And I think for this kind of application, that will be the must use of WebAssembly and Blazor in the market. The big cases of WebAssembly, in my opinion, will be for games. Because it's possible, completely possible. Of course, it's pretty new in the markets, and we can't guarantee that 100% will work fine on the browser, but definitely, if you have some issues right now, that will be fixed soon.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. I was totally new to this technology, and now I know better. I have a question. For a long time, browsers are evolving, and now we have a lot of capabilities that are provided not only DOM manipulation, but all other things like working with multimedia, OpenGL mentioned, and so on. Are they easily used in WebAssembly? Because currently, as I know, you've shown the JavaScript call, and I know that call to at least DOM is slow. So it's no faster, or maybe even slower than work through the JavaScript. That's why it's cool to have logic inside of WebAssembly, but then when you need to show something to user, again, wait. So are there any plans, do you know?
Yeah, so we have WebAssembly is still depends on JavaScript to manipulate the DOM. So, but in Vue.js and other JavaScript libraries, we have that handler much good the virtual DOM for us, and just apply changes on the DOM when it's necessary, and Blazor is doing the same. So that's a limitation for the web, for the browser. So that solved a lot of problems, and you can run, I don't know, faster, a lot of stuff, but one part of the application, it's depend on JavaScript, and because it needs to manipulate the DOM. So that's is still being a limitation of our life as a web developer.
Hi, thank you for your topic, for your speech. It was really interesting. My question is, what is about the indexing of the search engines currently? Because it's, as you say, it's SPA, yeah, so we potentially can have some problems with indexing.
Some features or some resources are pretty, it's a challenge for a single page application in general. So Blazor started as an open source project, and despite of Microsoft incorporate that in the .NET platform, is still open source, and there are a lot of people working in make the web, the Microsoft Blazor app compatible with this search engine index, but definitely it's not working so well in my opinion. So I recommend to wait until this type of Microsoft Blazor application, it's currently in preview, and the Microsoft promised to the technical community publicly that's gonna be stable and official released on May. So it's not working so well for search engine at all.
Okay, and the next question is, how do you think, what is the best place for Blazor will be? Where to put it, where it will be fit the best?
I think for games, for complex application that needs to stream videos and this stuff. And one of the most important things about Blazor, if you are running the C# code on the browser using WebAssembly, in the future soon you have the possibility to create desktop applications, native desktop applications using Microsoft Blazor. So I think there's a lot of possibilities, but my answer in that moment would be for applications that needs high performance, like for video streaming and games on the browser. It's a complex operation on the browsers, and it's almost impossible to run that without using WebAssembly.
Unfortunately, we have no time. The lecture time is over. If you want to ask questions, you can come to speaker lounge and ask them. And now let's thank our speaker with a round of applause.